Students, today we shall start the chapter The Rise of Nationalism in Europe in your history textbook. Let's start. First of all, we have to understand the meaning of the term nation. So, according to Ernst Renan, a nation is a culmination of a long past of endeavors, sacrifice, and devotion. So, it is in a way we have to understand that nation is the result of a long past of efforts and the sacrifices that we make, that the people make for the nation, and the devotion, the dedication that we have for the nation. A heroic past, great men, glory, that is the social capital upon which one bases a national idea. So the very national idea is based on a heroic past, great men, glory, to have common glories in the past, to have common will in the present, to have performed great deeds together, to wish to perform still more. These are the essential conditions of being a people. So the quality of people should be these, starting with taking a pride in the common glories of the past, and we have to have common will in the present, and having performed great deeds together, we still need to wish for performing more and more for our nation. So, a nation is therefore a large scale solidarity. So, it's a unity on a large scale. Its existence is a daily plebiscite. Plebiscite is a direct voting for approval or disapproval of something. So, the existence of a state is a daily plebiscite. So, a nation must not annex, it must not take control of or hold on to a country against its will, against its wishes. So, existence of a nation is a guarantee of liberty. So, it has to be understood the guarantee of liberty is there as long as nation is there. The chapter starts with the four prints made by the French artist Frederic Seurat, who, as I said, made a series of prints in which he visualized his dream of a world made up of democratic and social republics. In these four prints, he showed peoples of America and Europe, men and women of all ages and social class, they all marching in a long train and offering homage, offering tribute to the Statue of Liberty as they pass by it. Liberty has been personified as a female figure holding the torch of enlightenment in one hand and the Charter of Rights in the other. Ideals such as liberty, equality, freedom, justice, they can be personified as some human figure, as some female figure, so that the abstract idea of liberty or justice, equality can be felt in some concrete form, right? And on the foreground lies the shattered institutions of monarchy. So in this prints, Frederick Seurat tried to show that the coming days will be of the people. The power will be in the hands of common citizens, and the monarchical forms of institutions, they will be no more. They will be in ruins. So people of the world are grouped as distinct nations, identified through their flags and national costumes. In this picture, you can see nations such as America and Switzerland. They had already gone past the Statue of Liberty. So at the time, they were already nation states, while many nation states that we know them today as, they were not there like that earlier. That time they were still not nation states, like Germany, Italy. They were not nation states till then. They were only multi dynastic principalities. Here is a picture you can see, and what we have described. Even the gods seem to be gracing the occasion by eulogizing whatever developments are taking place, and there is a long train of people, they're being identified through flags as distinct nations, and they are marching past, they're paying homage to the Statue of Liberty and marching past the Statue of Liberty. And in the on the foreground we can see the shattered remains of all absolutist institutions. The French Revolution and the idea of nation. So during the 19th century, nationalism emerged as a force which brought about changes like the emergence of nation states in place of different dynastic empires of Europe. We have just now talked about Frederic Seurat, a French artist who visualized world as democratic and social republics. So the first idea of nationalism came with the French Revolution in 1789. French Revolution led to the transfer of sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens. So the French revolutionaries introduced various measures and practices that could create a sense of collective identity amongst the French people. The French Revolution introduced new ideas like la patrie, that means the fatherland, and les citoyens, the citizen, and a new French flag replacing the former royal standard amongst the French people. It introduced a centralized administrative system with uniform law for its citizens, for all the citizens. There were other measures like new hymns were composed, oaths were taken, martyrs were remembered in the name of the nation. Internal customs, duties, and dues were abolished, and State General was elected by the body of citizens and renamed as National Assembly. Regional dialects were discouraged. French language for speaking French became the common language of the nation. So we can all see these are the steps that have been taken by the revolutionaries. So a centralized administrative system that was to be in place, uniform civil code, internal customs and duties and dues were abolished, a uniform system of weights and measures, and the regional dialects were discouraged. And in place of them, a common language was there. So French was chosen as the common language of the nation. Now we move into Civil Code of 1804. We know that the conditions that paved the path for the military dictator Napoleon Bonaparte to rise to the occasion, the political instability has been the reason behind it. And as we know that after the fall of the Jacobins government, the middle class people grabbed the opportunity to take power in their hands. So they decided to form a new constitution. That new constitution was named as the Directory, which has a which has an executive, and that executive consisted of 5 members, because they thought, um, as the situation was there earlier prevailed earlier in France during the Jacobins government. The power was concentrated in one hand. Now they thought that power should be decentralized. So, with that idea, more members were chosen to take the responsibility of administering the country. But it was seen that they often fought among one another, and as a result of which the political situation in France became more volatile, it became more unstable, and this led to the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte, the military dictator. And when Napoleon Bonaparte became the ruler of France, he demolished democracy, and he brought about some changes in the administration, and the steps that he had taken were together known as the Civil Code of 1804, which is also known as the Napoleonic Code. What all the steps that had been taken under the Napoleonic Code were: all privileges based on birth were removed. So this is one of the major steps, right? And so it established equality before the law and secured the right to private property. It simplified administrative divisions in Dutch Republic, Switzerland, Italy, and Germany. So it abolished the feudal system and freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. It also removed guild systems in the town areas, and there were uniform laws, standardized weights and measures. Common national currency was also there, and transport and communication systems were improved. As regards the guild restrictions, we must understand that during those time in town areas and cities, powerful guilds used to be there. It means the areas of exclusive authority enjoyed by the old traders. So they would not allow the new traders and challenge their monopoly. And these old traders had the support of the monarchy. That's why new traders did not find it easy to do their trade. So they had to move to countryside. They had to move to the countryside, right? Now, the measures that were taken by Napoleon, how the reactions of the people were there to all the measures that been taken by Napoleon Bonaparte. Initially, in many places such as Holland and Switzerland, French armies seen as harbingers of liberty. They were seen as a force which should give liberty to people. Peasants, artisans, workers, and new businessmen enjoyed newfound freedom. But soon, people realized that the new administrative systems did not go with political freedom. So he put more taxation, increased taxation, exercised censorship, forced conscription, means young people were forcibly pushed into French armies. They were pushed to join French armies. All this seemed to outweigh the advantages of the administrative changes that were done under the Napoleonic Code. Right. So let us move to the yes, this section in which we can see how in this picture Napoleon here is represented as a postman on his way back to France after he lost the Battle of Leipzig in 1813. So each letter dropping out of his bag bears the name of the territories he lost. The making of nationalism in Europe. So we have to understand the aristocracy and the new middle class. See, socially and politically, a landed aristocracy was dominant class. Powerful aristocracy was smaller. Majority of population made up of the peasantry. That we already know that in France, when we were discussing the uh, demographic composition and how the society was consisting of a very meager section of people, meager percentage of people being rich and a large section of people being poor. So 90% of the population comprised of peasantry. In Western and Central Europe, the growth of industrial production and trade meant the growth of towns and the emergence of commercial classes. Industrialization began in the late 18th century, while in France, in England, it began in the late 18th century, while in France and and parts of German states, it occurred in the 19th century. So we can understand that the Western Europe had industrialization and urbanization happening much earlier than the Central and Eastern Europe. Central and Eastern Europe, where industrialization was late, and we can see the um, as a result of industrialization, urbanization taking place, and new social groups also coming into being. New working class, middle class people were there, educated class were there, workers, mill workers were there, businessmen were there, lawyers, professionals, they were there. So percentage of such people were more there in the Western Europe as compared to the eastern part of Europe. So ideas of national unity gained popularity among the educated liberal middle classes. These are some of the important dates. What liberal nationalism stood for. And we have to understand what is liberal nationalism. It stood for the end of autocracy and clerical privileges. And they also wanted a constitution and a representative government through parliament, freedom of individuals and equality before law. And they were against the violation of the right to private property. So the right to private property cannot be violated. Freedom of markets and abolition of state imposed restrictions. So they didn't want any kind of government interference as far as markets are concerned, and they want the complete abolition of state imposed restrictions. Now, a new conservatism after 1815, we can see post the defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte, when conservative forces became more powerful and they actually, if we talk about what the conservatives believed, the conservatives believed that established traditional institutions of state and society like monarchy, the church, the social hierarchies, property and family be preserved. They need they need not be disturbed, they need to be preserved. I mean, the social hierarchies, when we're talking about social hierarchies, as we know in French societies, there were three states. The first two states enjoyed all clerical privileges. The first two states, the clergy and the nobility, they enjoyed all privileges, whereas the third state had to bear the brunt of everything. They had to pay the taxes, and they were not given any privileges. No special rights were given to them. So such social hierarchies had to be conserved. The status of monarchy and church also had to be maintained. Initially they were opposed to changes. Later they preferred gradual development to quick changes. So most conservatives did not propose a return to society of pre-revolutionary days. Right? This was the new conservatism in which they believed that return to society of pre-revolutionary days is not possible. From the changes initiated by Napoleon, they realized modernization could, in fact, strengthen traditional institutions like monarchy. So they started realizing that the changes that been started by Napoleon uh, that brought about modernization. So they they started thinking that modernization could empower traditional institutions like monarchy. Now, Treaty of Vienna, in which what happened, it was following the defeat of Napoleon by the collective force of Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. They met at Vienna to draw up a settlement of Europe. The Congress was hosted by Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich. The Bourbon dynasty was restored to power. During the Napoleonic rule, what Napoleon had started doing, he started dethroning the kings who belonged to the Bourbon dynasty, and in place of them, he installed the people that belonged to his family and those who were his relatives. So now, after the conservative forces came to power, they started restoring Bourbon dynasty to power. So French lost the territories it annexed during the Napoleonic rule. Napoleon, as we know, that he was a dictator, and under his ambitious plan, he, as a part of his his ambition of ruling all over Europe, he started annexing more and more territories. So, whatever territories were annexed during his rule, that were all released from the French control. So, French lost territories it annexed during the Napoleonic rule. A series of states were formed around France to stop French expansion in future. So they were scared in future nobody like Napoleon Bonaparte should emerge again and start doing his expansionist policies, starts implementing his expansionist policies. So to stop any further expansion of France, the people who met at Vienna Convention, they decided to uh, establish a series of states formed around France to stop its further expansion. No future expansion should be possible, so that restoring the monarchies that had been overthrown by Napoleon. So this been already discussed that the Bourbon dynasty was restored to power. There's a similar point, restoring the monarchies that had been overthrown by Napoleon. So Europe after Congress of Vienna. Now, what happened to the revolutionaries? See, following the years after 1815, the year of repression drove many liberal nationalists underground. Liberal nationalists now scared that they would be haunted, they would be caught, they would be arrested. So they decided to go underground because conservative forces became powerful. They restored the Bourbon dynasty. So the revolutionaries, those who were operational during the revolutionary movements, once they are suppressed, once the conservative forces became powerful, so they went underground, the revolutionaries went underground. So revolutionary meant opposing monarchies established after the Vienna Convention and fighting for liberty and freedom. So creation of nation states was seen as a necessary part of the revolution for freedom. Now their main demand, the main demand of the revolutionaries, or the main agenda of the revolutionaries, was to create nation states, right? And that would be the real freedom for them. Giuseppe Mazzini, one such Italian revolutionary who was a member of secret society of Carbonari, and he founded two more underground societies, Young Italy in Marseilles and Young Europe in Bern, with the purpose of unifying Italy and liberating it from the multi-dynastic rules. Here is a picture in which Giuseppe Mazzini and the founding of Young Europe in Bern in 1833. The age of revolution, the period from 1830 to 1848, is very important, as during these years A number of revolutions took place in different countries. Starting with France in July 1839, the Bourbon kings who were restored to power um, were overthrown again by the liberal revolutionaries. The Bourbon kings who were overthrown by Napoleon Bonaparte during his rule, and after that, when Vienna Convention took place, the Bourbon dynasty was restored to power. Now, when in July 1839 in France, revolutions started taking place, the liberal revolutionaries they installed constitutional monarchy by overthrowing the Bourbon kings, and Louis Philippe was made its head. Belgium also. In Belgium, the July uprisings in Brussels, the capital city of Belgium, led Belgium to break away from United Kingdom of Netherlands. Now Greece is one such country which had been a part of the Ottoman Empire since the 15th century. It is seen as a cradle of European civilization. So by poets, artists, mobilized public support to its struggle against a Muslim domination, leading to its becoming an independent nation. A Treaty of Constantinople was signed, and that led Greece to become an independent nation. We have to understand that wars are not fought only with guns or weapons or ammunitions. They fought with a cultural movement also. So, Romanticism is a cultural movement which sought to develop a particular form of nationalist sentiments through art, poetry, stories, and music. It questioned glorification of reason and science and focused on emotions, intuitions, and mystical feelings. Several countries such as Greece, Poland, Balkan region where the cultural movement paved the way for independence. In Poland, how the Polish people fought against the Russian domination by resisting to speak in Russia because uh, speak in Russian language, because when Poland was under Russian control, the Russian government um, forced the people of Poland to speak Russian language only, but the Polish people they resisted it with the language of with their own language only, with Polish language only. So language then in Poland was used as a tool, is it was used as a weapon to fight against the Russian domination. In Balkan region also, we discuss the Balkan region in the later section of this chapter. But in the Balkan region also, wherein we know, yes, Greece was also a part of the Balkan region only, and as we have discussed a short while ago, that Greece was regarded as a cradle of European civilization, and a poet named Lord Byron, he collected money to fight the war of independence of Greece. So we can say that cultural movement has played a very important role in liberating countries. So there were reasons why during the years of 1830s why there was so much of uh, unrest. It was mainly because of hunger, hardships, and the popular revolt in the 1830s. So enormous increase in population, that was also one of the reasons. Huge unemployment was there. Small producers, particularly in textile production, faced stiff competition from cheap mill-made cloths from England. In those regions where aristocracy was dominant, peasants suffered. So the rise of food prices added with the crop failure led to widespread pauperism, bankruptcy, right? It led to savings getting diminished and leading to pauperism, that is bankruptcy. So in 1848, people took to streets, anarchy, lawlessness spread, and Louis Philippe was forced to run away. So we have to just simply understand that there was not only one factor responsible for this series of revolutions that was taking place. Of course, cultural movement also played its role, and the liberal forces, liberal nationalist forces, at once on the roads. If the poor were fighting, um, on the other hand, we have people belonging to the middle class, the rich middle class, also fighting their war. And they were talking of constitution, they were talking of parliament, right? So they had their own way of fighting for liberating their country, um, for unification of the country. So we would also see that even conservative forces later on realizing that they would have to concede some power, they would have to listen to wishes of people, and even they realize that if they don't do something for the people, people may not regard them in future. People may not see them with a great amount of with the amount of respect that they would expect. So uh, for that reason also, they later on took the responsibility of unifying the nation, as we can see in the case of Germany also, where the Prussian king, the Prussian ruler, took the responsibility of unifying Germany. And in Italy too, the Italian king Emmanuel, uh, he had taken the responsibility of unifying Italy. So uh, children, we will keep it till here. And okay, let us just discuss furthermore the 1848 revolution of the liberals. I was just talking about it only a short while ago. A revolution parallel to the revolt of the poor, led by educated middle class, was underway. Events of February 1848 in France led to abdication of the monarch, so of republic based on universal male suffrage. Universal male suffrage means the liberals were not in support of universal adult franchisee, means women still did not have the right to vote, nor were they demanding for the right to vote to be given to women. They were only demanding the right to vote to be given to males. Liberal took advantage of the growing unrest, pushed for the demands of nation states on parliamentary principles. In German regions, political associations whose members were middle class professionals, businessmen, came together to vote for all German National Assembly. Frederick William IV, King of Prussia, rejected the demand. The proposal was made by the Frankfurt Parliament, that he accepts the proposal of uh, the king become the subject to parliament. But the monarchy and the aristocracy, they and the military power, they came against the Frankfurt Parliament and decided to uh, disband the Frankfurt Parliament. So later the Frankfurt Parliament was disbanded. Though conservative forces were able to suppress liberal movements, but they could not restore the old order. This was what I was talking, that they later on realized that they have to uh, give in to some demands of people, so that they have a place in the hearts of people, right? So till here we discussed. We'll discuss the remaining part of the chapter in the next lecture. So if any questions are there arising out of whatever things that have been explained, you can always post your questions to me. Thank you so much.